Welcome to Legal Innovation Spotlight, the podcast that brings you the latest advancements in legal tech and knowledge management. I'm Ted Theodoropoulos, and I connect with the industry's brightest minds to provide you with valuable insights and actionable takeaways. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Tom, Dennis, how are you gentlemen doing this afternoon?
Hey, Ted. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. It only took 6 months for us to get schedules aligned.
Are you sure it wasn't longer than that?
I thought it was just 6 weeks.
Yeah, but all's well that ends well. We made it happen. And I'm thrilled to have you guys on. I've been a listener of the Kennedy-Mighell Report, and I'm a bit of a podcast junkie. And there's really not a ton out there in the legal tech/innovation space, which was part of my motivations for creating this podcast. But there are a few that are good, yours being one of them. So before we jump in, why don't, I feel the audience probably already knows both of you, but Tom, why don't we start with you just to give a quick introduction?
Sure. Thanks, Ted. So my name is Tom Mighell. I am, my current position is I am Chief Operating Officer at a company called Contoural. We are information governance consultants. We work with corporations to help better manage their records and information. As we will get into it later, we do a lot of work in Microsoft 365 and Teams. I have had the pleasure of being the co-host with Dennis on the Kennedy-Mighell Report for I don't know how many years, Dennis? 15, 16, 17 years? More?
I think we're just about to pass 18.
18 years?
Or hit 18, yeah.
Yep, we co-authored a book together on the Lawyer's Guide to Collaboration Tools and Technologies. Our most recent version, the Work From Home edition, is now out. And I love talking about technology.
Awesome.
And I'm Dennis Kennedy, and I'm currently the director of the Center for Law, Technology, and Innovation at Michigan State University. I also teach a class at Michigan Law School, which means, and I live in Ann Arbor, which means basically I have to make sure that I check which colors I'm wearing, depending on where I happen to be on a given day. But I practiced law for a long time, more than 40 years, including experience in large firms. And for the latter part of my career before going into academia, I was in-house counsel, I would say in-house technology counsel at MasterCard, and got to work on a lot of cool cutting-edge technology projects from the legal side. And then I've been involved in the internet, blogging, podcasting, writing, speaking, doing all sorts of stuff on technology and innovation for many years.
I guess I should really say first, Ted, beforehand, I sort of left out the big thing that I also am a lawyer, and I practiced law for about 18 years before becoming a consultant. So that time is passing farther and farther away, so which is probably why I forgot to talk about it, but was a litigator here in Dallas for 18 years, enjoyed my time, but very much more enjoy my time working with people on information governance and technology.
Interesting. Yeah, the book was actually the catalyst for striking up this conversation with you both. I've known Debbie Foster for a long, long time, and I know you guys are close with her. And I asked her to make an introduction. I used to work. I was at Microsoft. I was on started off on the Microsoft Access support team, moved to the SQL Server team. This is going back 24 years ago, so it's been a minute. But when Office 2000 came out, there was an interesting little new thing you could do with Access, and you could make it a native front end, so you could build forms and reports right on top of SQL. So no more ODBC link tables. It used ADO.NET, and I happened to dive into that really early and started building solutions with it. So decided to go to work for them, and that's
how we used to create record retention schedules for our clients. So as we built them in Access, and clients would often hook them up to their own SQL server. So
yeah, it's a great. I'll tell you right now. I've had a lot of developers work for me over the years. Some really good ones, including our current CTO at InfoDash right now, and he is almost a savant with technology. And I'll go head to head with him any day on getting a basic kind of fruit stand app out the door, forms over data. It's so quick. It's drag and drop. There's no data access layer, no API code you have to write. It doesn't scale terribly well, but it's a great quick fix. Which is maybe why you were using it, Tom. Is that
well,
how?
We were using it because it was a quick fix. But the thing is, we're not using it now because IT departments don't support it. The legal departments that we talk about don't know how to use it. And to be quite honest, I find that Microsoft Power Apps offers very similar functionality to what Access used, and we've started moving towards automating it all or putting it all into a Power App rather than Access. We just are not finding anybody who wants to use Access anymore. But I agree, at the time, it was a great tool.
Yeah, plus there's no Mac version of Access.
Yep.
It's not mobile accessible, all that.
A lot of
solved.
limitations.
Yeah, with Power Apps. Well, you guys have had the last count when I wrote the agenda, you had 350 plus episodes, which is a staggering number. I think this will be, I don't know, number 14 for me. So I'm still early on in the journey, having a blast with it. You know, it was never on a bucket list, like, oh, I want to host a podcast. But somebody suggested, they were like, dude, you've been around in the legal tech circles for a long time and you got a great Rolodex. Why don't you, there's clearly a gap. You've talked about it. So I started it. And now when I look on my calendar and I see like that I've got recording sessions, it's like, I get a little jazzed, man. I really enjoy it. It's been a lot of fun. What's been like, and I guess I'll ask you this individually because you probably both have different opinions on this. Tom, what's been your most compelling episode, which that you've enjoyed most?
So go with Dennis for this first, because I want to hear what Dennis's is, because I'm wondering whether we have the same, because we may have the same thing, and I want to see what he says first.
What do you think, Dennis?
Actually, no, Tom's favorite one, even if he doesn't. But the, that's such an interesting question, because part of me wants to say it's the last one, because I think that they're always interesting to me. I think that we've done some sets of podcasts that I think work really well together. So like the ones we did on our second brain project. I think some of the podcasts we did right at the beginning of COVID, where we talked about, what people needed to do right away, I thought were especially good. And the new Fresh Voices in Legal Tech series we're doing, I just think it's turned out amazingly well. So I think the main thing is that we've been able to figure out ways to keep it fresh over the years. And part of that is, and this is sort of my advice to anybody doing a podcast, is that we've always conceived of this as a show, and it has like an A segment, a B segment, and we end with the parting shots. And it, so there's actual little, parts to it. And we've kind of kept that framework, and then we've introduced variety, especially in the B section. I think that has kept it fresh.
I didn't have the same answer. That's awesome. So actually the podcast that I enjoyed having the most, I will say the guest that we enjoyed having the most was Caruana Gatimu from Microsoft, who came to talk to us about Teams when Teams was sort of taking off as the pandemic was hitting. Having her on the podcast was really special. But I will say, as Dennis says, that we try to make it like a show with different segments. Our show is the structure of it is based on the ESPN show Pardon the Interruption, which we have loved for a long time, and we enjoyed making it fun like that. And that's why we call our parting shot sort of that one tip, website, or observation that you can start to use the second that the podcast is over. But I would say then my favorite podcast of the year is always at the very end of the year. We do a year-end show. We invite Debbie Foster. We invite Debbie on, and we treat it very much like Pardon the Interruption. We have a lot of bits that are very similar to what they do. We morph it into legal technology. I win literally everything, every game that we have on the podcast, which is awesome. I very much enjoy that, and it kind of pays tribute to our inspiration for doing this for so many years.
And this is how long we've worked together. I If Tom wouldn't have mentioned it, I would have told you that Teams episode would be one that definitely one that he mentioned. So
Good stuff.
I thought you were going to use the one of my smoothie maker as being my favorite one.
Yeah, Mr. Jobs to be done. No, that's a good one though. I forgot about that.
Well, the Teams topic is a good segue, because the topic of law firm collaboration is something that we're very focused on at InfoDash. In fact, we're really trying to change the way that the terms people use. So today, people still talk about intranets and extranets, and that terminology doesn't make sense anymore. There is no intranet, right? If they have an intranet that's on-prem, it's going to be in the cloud very soon. Everything is really an extranet. Extranets used to live in a DMZ inside your network, or if it would be in the cloud. So really it's the audience. The intranet, extranet, the terms really align to the audience that you're collaborating with. It's either internal or it's external collaboration, but it's all collaboration. So, we find that I spent 10 years at Bank of America in financial services, and I was at Microsoft. So I've seen some industries outside of legal who are way ahead on this. And, it feels like law firms are a little bit behind. And the way I see law firms using Teams today is really three basic ways: chat, presence, and online meetings. I don't see a lot of client matter work that's being done in Teams yet. Things are trending in that direction. I have another episode with Micah Hopgood from Dykema and Tori Carrillo from Nelson Mullins, and they are doing real client matter work in Teams with retention policies, and they're doing the whole thing. But most, it's very basic. Tom, you work with other industries in your role. Where are law firms relative to other industries in the collaboration space?
So I'm going to give a dual answer, because I think to a certain extent they're behind. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of companies out there who get it. They tend to be larger companies. They tend to be companies that are more widely distributed, dispersed, have more money, have more people. But I would say there's a lot of small companies out there that operate a lot like law firms. And especially when we talk about corporate law departments within companies, they operate a lot like law firms too, in that, I would think that if you're working for a company, you would want to take advantage of the technology that company has to offer on an enterprise level. And a lot of times we get brought in, and the corporate law department says, yeah, we just brought in our own enterprise content management system and we're dealing with it here. And I'm like, that's great, but how do you collaborate with the rest of the company on that? Oh, we don't. We're in our own silo and they're in their own silo. And so guess what? It's email, and we collaborate using email. But I think that lawyers and law firms are generally still a little bit behind. I think some of it's caution, some of it is a lack of competence, some of this is how we've always done it. And I will still say that between law firms and companies, email is still the predominant form of collaboration. I just have to say that even those that are using Teams well still don't go away from email for certain things. So I think corporations have made a lot more gains. Lawyers are starting to do so. I agree that it's more the big firms are starting to do the more innovative work around that area. But there's still some work to be done.
Yeah, I in general I agree. Although I'm actually think that because of COVID, work from home, some of the constraints people have had, I think that there's an uptick in the smaller firm, medium-sized firm, even the access to justice space in teams and collaboration tools out of necessity. But I do think that Tom is right about that. You do a lot of departments kind of treat themselves as a silo, and you start to wonder, why am I not using the same tools? So I was at MasterCard, and this is sort of this common thread that I will hear when I'm talking to other in-house counsel. It's like, we have our own content. We need to have our own content management, document management. We need to do all these things. You're like, well, why don't you hook it on to, like, the whole company has Salesforce, they have Oracle, they have all these other things. Like, why don't you just like put an app into there, or use Microsoft Teams? I mean, like, you're just going to be way better off. I mean, there's a little bit of an uptake. And then the law firms, I think it's really interesting because you have this notion that law firms are this sort of integrated whole. And Jeff Carr, well-known former in-house counsel, always describes law firms as like hotels for lawyers, and that's their business model. And so you think that there's this collaboration between different departments, different lawyers in departments, and they actually stay pretty much to themselves. And so they don't necessarily see the benefits of that. And so they stick with what it is that they know, which is email. And then lawyers are the ones who are notorious, I think, that if you're in Teams or you're in a collaboration tools, they're probably going to be the first ones using emails and sending out attachments to emails, and you lose like all the benefits of having that collaboration system.
Yeah. How much, and you're both former lawyers, how much of it seems like, I'm not an attorney, but have worked with them for many years. And it seems like, especially in the kind of the rainmaker world, there's a little bit of a lone wolf mentality. And, like, lawyers are notoriously resistant to profiling documents and sharing in CRM, because they have this book of business, to your point, kind of a hotel for lawyers. Well, when they go to their next hotel, they want to bring things with them, and sometimes that creates a resistance. How much of that? Well, first of all, do you think that dynamic is real, and if so, how much of that gets in the way of collaboration within law firms?
Yeah, let me jump in on this one, because I think this is gigantic. And teaching in law students, I see that you do have this, like, I need to do everything myself and I can't share. It's super competitive. And that does track its way through the profession. And so I think in the rest of the world, we know from the studies that, from that sort of seminal Google study, that the most successful teams, the key element is psychological safety. And that at law firms, you don't see that being developed. And so when people are looking at collaboration, knowledge management, part of the concern is, oh, they're going to take the stuff that I know and then they're going to get rid of me. And that tends to permeate. And whether it is like, somebody else is going to take my client, or, whatever might happen, that tends to go through. And I think that is a really significant factor. Plus, there is the case that lawyers, a lot of lawyers are just really comfortable working on their own, and they think that's the way to do it. And they don't want to be criticized. They don't think other people can help them. They think they are the smartest person in the room, as lawyers are known for thinking. And they haven't really seen the benefits that I think other professions, other industries have seen with collaboration. So that's my soapbox there.
So I'm going to disagree with that to a certain extent, which is, and it's the forefront of the book, is lawyers have always been collaborating. So they know how to work with outside counsel. They know how to work with their clients. They know how to work internally with paralegals or their other lawyers. So collaboration is not a foreign experience to them. I would argue that it's all about the technology. And it's all about the knowledge management and the desire to keep on to all of those things. So I would say that I think there's a lone wolf mindset, but even those lone wolves probably are also used to, in a world where we were more used to sending emails or having meetings or doing things in person, that collaboration is not a foreign concept. It's just not adopted well. to the different technical ways that people can use to be really successful about it.
Yeah, and I think Tom's right that one of the things we noticed when we were writing the book and such is that lawyers react like they collaborate all the time. They manage projects all the time. They do change management. They do all these things that have labels elsewhere, but they kind of recoil if to put those names on it. And so, yeah, you're like, you would have a lawyer say like, I did this case. So we use the example in the book of like that classic, one lawyer fighting for justice, and then you realize if you track that back, they're working with all kinds of people. But there's that notion of, that one person, the knight for justice. And if you said you're doing a lot of collaboration, I think that lawyers will say like, no, I'm not sure collaboration is the right word for what I'm doing. And so some of it's a naming thing, and not being able to put their fingers on it. The other one to me is project management. Lawyers just don't. They manage projects all the time, and then they say like, I don't do project management. We need to bring somebody in. That's not a skill I can learn. I'm going like, well, of course it is. Like people learn this stuff all the time.
Yeah. What is there? And this may be a question. I'll start with you, Tom. Is like, what can be done to foster more adoption of the tool set? Like, yeah, I think part of it, you're right, is just unfamiliarity, and Teams is new, right? Teams is what, 5 years maybe. So it's a new concept. The Teams is really an amalgamation of, it used to be Skype for Business or Office Communicator, SharePoint. So those tools have been around for a long time, but Microsoft's kind of bundled them all together now, and in a single package. What can law firms, KM departments do to foster better adoption?
So I want to talk about this a little bit more when we get into the meat of things on Microsoft Teams. But I think part of the problem and why we're here is because IT departments have handled Teams much the same as they handled SharePoint. We're just going to throw it at you without any help, without any guidance, without any support, without any training, and just say, hey, great tool, go use it, fend for yourselves, and Godspeed. And I will talk about this more later. I think there needs to be more. I mean, I think that's why if you head over to the Microsoft site, there's a whole page it may be called adoption.microsoft.com. There's a whole area on how to get your company to adopt it. Now, in terms of law firms and creating, better, I guess, interdependency on that, I would the suggestion that I would make is one of our podcast episodes was with Dr. Heidi Gardner from Harvard on her book called Smart Collaboration. And in that book, she talks a lot about, there you go, you've got it. You know of whom we speak. And, she makes the case for more business, more success follows interdependence. And so maybe what lawyers need from a technological standpoint is to see the facts, to see the receipts, to see what happens to firms who do that. And to offering multiple disciplines to a client can be a really powerful thing. And I would say you might think it's harder in smaller firms, but I actually argue that it's easier. The smaller the firm, the greater the necessity to collaborate if you want to be successful on things. So I would say show them what she's found, that successful firms are the collaborating firms. That's not necessarily going to help out with the technology, but at least we'll start thinking, hopefully let them start thinking about it in a more enlightened way.
Yeah, and we have this. We talk a lot about the jobs to be done theory, and which I tend to express as like, what are you hiring this collaboration tool or any technology to do? And if you can answer that question and get really precise about it, then you'll move forward, because then you're looking at what problems are we trying to solve. You're not saying like, here's the solution, now let's look for problems that it might work on. So I think that's one piece. So that is part of like this, roll this stuff out. We think it'll be great for collaboration or knowledge management or whatever. go ahead and do it. And you're not going to get much help, but just go ahead and do it. And by the way, it's non-billable time, and like all these disincentives for you. Then I also think that there is an aspect that the change in these tools and the movement, among different tools, from one tool to another, happens too fast for lawyers. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that, but like I'm at Michigan Law School, and I go into a classroom and I'm showing PowerPoints on PowerPoint 2016. Okay, so like I don't even know what to do with that. So, but I think there is that, and then you're saying like, oh, you were saying 5 years ago, you were saying like Slack was the way to go. Now we don't even hear about Slack. It's Teams, and is it going to be Teams any longer? And then it was SharePoint, and now it's not SharePoint, and and now I was used to doing this, and now you're throwing AI into it and Copilot. What am I going to do? It's like too much change, and so I think that in the legal world, because lawyers feel like the thing lawyers are known for is saying like, I am so busy. So they feel that they have all this stuff going on. They're very stressed, and they say, I don't want a new technology that I don't understand that works, that actually makes it harder for me to do my job and to hit the deadlines that I do. And so that, I think, contributes to the wariness that they have. But I think there are a number of factors there, and there are generational aspects of it. I mean, as Tom will say, that we see like at ABA Tech Show and stuff, there are this sort of new generation of lawyers who are trying all sorts of new things, and they're just used to it, and they will move, especially in the cloud tools. They'll move from one cloud tool to another, like in one day. And in firms, you don't see that. Part of it is IT is still, 8 years later, trying to determine whether it's safe to upgrade from, Office 2016.
Yeah. And then, something else I think that is a challenge, and Tom, it sounds like this is where your day job, what you focus on, but governance and retention, like there are no best practices, at least in the legal space. So as an example, the episode with Tori and Micah from Nelson Mullins and Dykema, we did a session at ILTACON, and it was about, I think it was called Making Teams Work in the Legal World. We had 300 seats in there. They were all full, and we had people lined up on standing in the walls. So there's a tremendous interest, and they had to walk. It was at, I don't know if you went to ILTACON this year, but it was out in the yacht club. They had to walk through sweltering heat to get there, and we still had that kind of attendance. That's how much, and they weren't coming to see me. So it was clearly a good topic. And one of the things that they talked through was their difference in, they both take very different approaches to governance. So I don't remember which one does which, but I think it was Dykema. They have kind of a 3-day chat retention period, and within teams, and I think Nelson Mullins, they're doing 7 days. And the reason that they clear those out is they want the chats to be in channels, and so they can, from a discoverability perspective, they get captured, in inside some sort of a taxonomy, as opposed to, if I have because it really does make it difficult. I experience it. We use Teams, obviously, at Info-2, and you'll have a chat in a leadership channel, for example, and talk about something, scrolling, findability, it's difficult, but there are probably better, more well-defined governance best practices more generally, or in other industries, or is that not the case?
It is not the case. No, it's not. And that's one of the things that a lot of companies are coming to us to try to understand right now, because and frankly, I've beat on this drum enough during the podcast. Companies, when we think about governance of just overall information, if you've got things on SharePoint, or you have things heaven forbid, on a file share somewhere, they still aren't. They're still keeping everything forever. They're not really enforcing their retention requirements or any retention policies or schedules that they have. And Microsoft doesn't make it easy. Microsoft has got a ton of information out there, and it's all helpful information, but it's like one document at a time. We tried to help clients with the e-discovery tools in Microsoft 365, and there's not one single place to go get it. There's about 500 places to go get it, and I think it's similar to Teams, but we're getting that. I think, to your point earlier that you said that, most law firms are still using Teams for chat and presence and online meetings. To be honest, companies are doing that as well. I mean, they are, very few are starting to use it for actual collaboration and document management and collaboration. That's more. I would say it's probably 70 to 80% of companies are still using it for chat and presence and online meetings. But a lot of the ones we're meeting with really still just use it and say, we just use chat, we just use meetings. Some of them say we use Zoom for meetings and we use Teams for chat. So there's a lot of divergence there too. But in terms of governance, I think that placing a small limit just on the general personal chat is a real smart idea, because that's where the risky conversations happen, the same way that they happen in email. And so I think that a 3 or 7 day period is not a bad idea. A lot of companies are nervous about that because they're mindful of the risk of keeping it too long, but they're also mindful of the risk of, what if we lose something that would help us prove that that person was sexually harassing somebody via a Teams chat, and it goes away in 3 days. So there are different minds on that. But when they get into the channels, the governance that we usually talk about has to do with what we think of as what's the record content that's being created there. So for most of for example, we use Teams for all of our projects. We invite clients into our teams. We join external teams if they have them. And we have retention on everything in that channel, the documents, the chats, the everything, but it's based on our retention schedule saying that for project-related documents, we delete it X number of days or years once the project is closed. So we follow, and we've set up Microsoft 365 so that once that project is over, the clock starts ticking on all the information that's in there. And that's sort of how we approach it with the client, to say, all right, what is to use Dennis's terms, what is the job to be done in this channel? What is being done? Is it a project site? Is it a site where you're just doing ongoing work with your team? What are the records and things that are being stored there? And that will help drive the governance. Governance is very possible in Teams. They're making it very, very granular on the levels of things that you can control. But you have to have a strategy and figure out what is it that we want to control, and how do we define the information to be controlled.
Yeah, I mean, Tom is so right on this, because I just think about most of the things that I've seen and heard about. And I sometimes joke that when I was at a big law firm in St. Louis, that we were talking, it was like early on when people were talking about email retention. And I used to joke, because it was sort of true, that the litigators felt that the emails should be deleted automatically before they were received, because they didn't want to have anything that worked against them in litigation. And then you'd say, well, no, look all these things where we have like ongoing negotiations, or there's stuff around intellectual property. And then you end up in this weird world. And I think chat, whether it's outside teams, inside teams, to me is just a recipe for disaster when you go to these short, very short things, because inevitably somebody who's high enough up is going to have something deleted and they've forgotten something, or they felt it was important, and there are going to be exceptions made, and that's going to cause big problems down the line. And so I think to bring in somebody like Tom, who from the beginning can say, look, this is what needs to be done. Let's understand why, it probably does have to, it's not going to be one size fits all. And in a lot of cases, especially if you're a company that is doing a lot of innovation, patent work, this idea that you're just going to delete everything really quickly just goes against the grain of what you would want to have there. Just like, so I think there's a lot of nuance, and I would agree with Tom that if you can push to something like Teams, and probably Teams is starting to be the choice, then you have a way of organize on that stuff. And I know Tom will talk more about this, but that combination of Copilot and generative AI with Teams to do some of that categorization and other things like that is potentially a game changer if Microsoft gets it right.
Yeah. And, so our theory is that, well, Teams already has 91 of the top Fortune 100 use Teams as their primary collaboration platform. So that's really impressive market share. We think, and we're betting on this with the future of the company, that buyers of legal services, these Fortune companies, are going to request that law firms meet them where they are and collaborate on Teams, because the way it works today, HiQ is the incumbent in that external collaboration or extranet space. If I'm MasterCard, I have 20 panel firms. I have 20 different law firm HiQ sites to go to with 20 different URLs and 20 different sets of credentials and 20 different user interfaces, because you can customize the hell out of HiQ. And there's a lot of friction in that. So we think that Teams as an extranet platform makes tremendous sense. And we also think that the unification, like having a internal or intranet platform, internal collaboration or intranet platform that already has all these integrations that you need, that you want to expose the data to your clients, having two separate systems do that just doesn't make sense. Have one. So that's kind of what we're banking on. What do you think, Tom, as far as the appetite for buyers of legal services to want to go that direction?
I mean, I totally agree. In terms of buyers of legal services, I think that the companies that we're working with are coming to that conclusion slowly. But I will also tell you, I think it's going to, when we talk about the Fortune 100, again, I want to make a distinction between larger companies and maybe the mid to small market companies, because when I start a new project with a client, my last question, I have a planning meeting with them. My last question is, how do you want to collaborate? And I say my only rule is no email. We're happy to set up a team on our end. If you have something, because I can't always guarantee that they will have Teams, happy to store our documents on your end. And those who have Teams, it doesn't even occur to them to ask us to use Teams. I have to bring it up, and so it's. I don't think we're quite there yet, but they we just met with somebody yesterday, and they said, well, we've already got our team set up for the project. Would it make sense to invite Tom's team into our team? And I'm like, well, duh, that should have been something you thought about ahead of time. So it's I think it's slowly taking hold. The one thing that I think is interesting, and this is something that if anybody from Microsoft is listening to this podcast, this is something that I think you guys need to solve immediately, because the problem that both the companies are going to have and the law firms are going to have is currently there is no way to have cross-tenant teams on the same screen. So if you want to go and collaborate with another team, another outside entity, you have to go up and completely switch over to a new tenant, which is painful, and it is not error-free. There are issues that come up around it, and you don't get notified of things. I've been having meetings on my team site that my other consultant said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was over in the other client's team and I didn't even know that we were doing this because I got no notifications." I thought Microsoft was fixing this, but they're not. That would be, to me, the game changer between external collaboration, because then you've got every team that you're attached to all in one row, and you can easily and seamlessly talk to people. And it's just amazing to me that that hasn't been made a thing yet.
So shared channels are supposed to address some of that, right? They require this B2B. It's almost like federation, which makes it. There's overhead associated. It's not seamless, right? So your IT departments have to set up the B2B sharing, and there are decisions that you have to make. Like, I trust their authentication, or they need to MFA into our tenant, and all of that sort of stuff. So I don't know how you get around that, but I think that's where they want to go.
Well, that raises another issue. There are still companies out there whose IT departments do not want to enable external sharing. They only want it to be for internal collaboration. I was talking with a company this past week. They've got a very interesting issue happening. Is they have their employees who are inviting cloud-based AI chatbots into their meetings to transcribe the meetings. So they're just joining as another attendee, and they're allowing them into as a guest. And they're saying, well, the only option is we just ban all external sharing, and then that goes away. And I say, well, that doesn't sound like a great idea. But it's something that IT departments are still thinking about and are still doing. There are some that we cannot collaborate with because the IT department has said, sorry, we do not permit external sharing.
Well, and there's this other piece that I've noticed with Tom. So Tom and I have like our little team's collaboration space. But if I have any issues, then Tom gets turned into the IT department for Teams for our little collaboration. And most people don't want to do that. And you don't want to say like, oh, I'm doing this. What I want to have is this nice collaboration space, and something comes up, and then I either have to figure out how to fix it myself, which I'm not going to be able to do in a large organization, or I have to somehow get the IT department to get it on their, I have to do the ticket, all those sort of things. And, that's not going to help me in the actual meeting that I'm in. And so there are some difficulties there. It's none of this is totally, insurmountable, but there are these little things. And I think in the legal world, people will say like, oh, this one little thing that happened once or could theoretically happen would be so awful that we're not going to do anything at all. We're going to throw away the 99% good of this just in case something bad would happen. And that's what lawyers are good at, right? We see risk and we see what could go wrong.
It's really true. We've been very fortunate. So AcroWire, which was the predecessor company, we started in 2008. And then we switched to a product company because we had built the same solution so many times, and we partnered with some vendors in the space that their stuff wasn't very good. And we decided to build a better mousetrap. And one of the reasons why we've had so much growth in our first 2 years, law firms are finally moving to the cloud. It's 2024, y'all. Like other industries did this in 10 years ago, and law firms are just moving in earnest. Like, there's a typical sequence in a Microsoft 365 migration, right? It's usually you put Exchange in hybrid mode. It starts with messaging, right? Maybe you move full cloud into Exchange Online, and then the other ancillary pieces like SharePoint and maybe building out workflows and Power Automate. But yeah, it's just now happening. So I agree. It's the mindset of, and you know what? There are still AM law firms, and I'm not lying. I won't, but I could name 5 right now who still say no cloud, not now, not ever. And the not ever part has they've softened on that. In fact, one of the IT directors who used to beat that drum hard, I saw him at TLTF in December, and we were eating lunch. I was like, hey, how are you guys going to do AI? You can't do that on-prem. And he's like, touche. Yeah, we're aware. But it's still server huggers, man. Like, it's that dynamic the force is strong.
Yeah, it's when you said it, and you said 10 years ago, I was thinking that, well, you know, in my career as a technology lawyer, I think about like actually working on and negotiating software as a service cloud agreements like 25 years ago. So like for me, it's even harder to say like, wait, do I still have to explain what cloud is and the benefits and stuff, and to do it in such a simple way, when like the whole world has basically changed on that. And then I think about the whole idea of just trying to do this stuff yourself and secure it like on premises is like it's insane.
Yeah, there's a really prominent white shoe law firm in New York who they're still on prem, and I just had lunch with them at Legal Week. Great folks, and they understand how ridiculous it is that they're still on prem. And they had just at Legal Week, so 4 or 5 weeks ago, they finally told their last financial services client who's been prohibiting them from moving to the cloud, "We're going, and we hope we keep your business, but we're going." And I was so glad to hear that. They finally have enough motivation to tell their clients, "We're going whether you like it or not." And you're already there. Why can't we be there? That's ridiculous. So, well, we had I wanted to talk a little bit about the AI stuff too. We're running out of time. I guess we'll have to do that maybe on your show sometime. But I did want to ask, especially I think you, Dennis, while you were at MasterCard, I think we talked about. Did you guys require? Was it like Serengeti, or I think it's now called Legal Tracker? There was some technology solution that you required your panel firms to leverage.
Yeah, so what you're seeing now is that sometimes through the panel convergence process, so when you're streamlining the number of outside firms, you can push them to these technologies. And so Legal Tracker or Serengeti was the one that was really, really interesting because it sort of helps everybody in the process. And then because they did such a good job with the way that has evolved over the years, you can push your outside firms into that, and that gives you like a bunch of useful tools. And so you would say, can we do more of that? Can we say, if you want to work with us, you need to use Teams, you need to do these things. And a lot of times law firms, like your example, will just say, no, we flat out can't do that. We've been told we can't do that, and we have like all these reasons, that don't make sense. Microsoft, who knows if it will be around any longer, right? It's like it's a flyby. It's a startup basically.
Yeah.
We got to wait and see. But I think you're starting to see some of that where people are saying like, look, we really have to see things, and so there's two kind of interesting approaches. So one is that where we're saying like we want to move you to the tools that we use. And then the flip of that, which is when we were looking at what e-discovery tools to use, I said, let's look at what our, we have like one, basically what's our main outside law firm use for e-discovery, and we'll just pick that one. Like why even think about this stuff? So you have that push that's coming, and then other stuff is just going to be this sort of economic thing to say, can if you're asking us to pay you more per hour, then one of the things that we expect, and I've heard a number of general counsels say this, is we want our outside firms to give us the benefit of what they've learned about these technologies. And if they pick something and we're like trying to figure out what to use, they should come to us and tell us what to use and why. And so we get the standardization that way, where it comes from the law firms. And you're saying like, look, if we're paying you, I don't know what New York associates make now. I mean, I've heard like $1,200 an hour or whatever the heck it is these days. That you're saying like, well, if we're paying you millions and millions of dollars, then the collaboration should involve, a transfer of expertise and knowledge. And that would be one thing, because if you've looked at these tools and evaluated them and you're using them, especially for a number of clients, we would like to leverage that knowledge. And if you help us that way, we're more likely to keep you as one of our outside law firms. And so that becomes part of the dynamic. And that's an interesting development that I think when you have a lot of leverage, as a large client, that you can start to do, or, as part of the panel convergence where you say, we're slimming down from 100 law firms to 3, then you can make all sorts of outrageous demands that you might get your outside firms to agree to.
Yeah. The concept of going to law firms for technology guidance is interesting.
Well, but if it gives you standardization or sort of what's happening in the market, if you can move away from this notion that lawyers have, and I see this all the time on this ACC mailing list, and people will say, like, we're trying to find the best contract lifecycle management tool. And
that's been going on for like 15 years.
I was going to say, it's a popular topic.
Like, what the heck is that? No, it's like, I want to know, like, who has the biggest market share, and can I hire people who are able to work in that environment, and is that company likely to be around? Because the notion of best, I don't even have a clue, right? If I'm writing in an email, like on a listserv saying, like, what's the best contract lifecycle management tool to use, I probably wouldn't know the best if it hit me in the nose, right? So
very true. Well, this has been a great conversation. The meat and potatoes of what I wanted to discuss, we got to. There was some more stuff that I would have loved to have dived into. Maybe we can do it sometime in the future, but yeah, I really appreciate you guys joining me. You have such a track record in the space, and it's inspiring to think. Maybe I need a co-host to help with the longevity piece. The way you guys have a good, because you can't quit. You'll piss the other guy off, right? Like,
yeah, I don't know that helps any, Ted. I'm not sure that.
I'm better off on my own.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I just want to. I have this note in front of me of something that I wanted to say on the collaboration side, and it sort of like sums up my thinking on what we've talked about today. And it just comes down to this: I think that what you really want to do is to make it easy to work with you. And if that sort of guides what you're doing, that's going to advance you a long way into getting into the happy zone.
It's the truth. I mean, that's true for vendors, for law firms, for individual contributors. Being easy to work with and is a feather in your cap.
Well, and the corollary: make it easy for people to pay you.
Yes, very true. Getting paid is important. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for joining me today and having this conversation. I'd love to follow up and do it again sometime, whether it's on your show or again on here. You got a great following. It was a great conversation. I'm always up for talking about teams, and let's stay in touch going forward.
Yeah, cool. It was totally fun.
Yep, we agree. Hey, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having us, Ted.
Awesome. Absolutely. All right, we'll chat again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Legal Innovation Spotlight. If you found value in this chat, hit the subscribe button to be notified when we release new episodes. We'd also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate us and leave us a review wherever you're listening right now. Your feedback helps us provide you with top-notch content. Want to dive deeper into the world of legal innovation? Connect with us online at getinfo-.com, where you'll find additional resources and articles. You can also follow us on social media at getinfo- to stay updated on the latest news and insights in the field of legal tech and knowledge management. Once again, thank you for joining us today on Legal Innovation Spotlight, a fireside chat series hosted by Info-.